Sounds so low. That was scary, guys. I'm scared. Good morning, YouTube. Today we're talking about two amazing mousepads here. And the fact that I say amazing should already give you an indication of how this review is going to go. I've been a fan of the InfinityMice pad designs for quite a while now. Except I was never able to get one because they're mostly stocked in North America and shipping over here is pretty extreme. You know, I've asked Lethal, I've asked InfinityMice themselves multiple times on Twitter about what's going on with the shipping rates, why is the shipping more expensive than the pad itself, and things like that. Finally, we've managed to get 2 units, so big thanks to InfinityMice for sending these through. This is especially important given that I am a local OC reviewer and OzModShop has now stocked the 2 of these. So big W for all of you guys watching out there who are from the local region, because now these are accessible for you without needing to pay, let's say, $80 US for shipping for some reason. So the Duel here was released last year, the Vagabond released recently, along with a new series called Infinite that has been generating quite a bit of hype in the enthusiast community. So hopefully I'll have a chance to review those as well. So moving straight into the details, features, and unboxing. The pads come shipped flat in this cardboard box. As you can see, the box itself has a crazy nice looking design printed on them. I love this packaging. This is some wall art worthy packaging, and my god, I am impressed with packaging. The designs on the pad themselves are also beautiful. As you guys can see, they look really good. Like, no doubt, this is by far the most aesthetic looking pad I have ever had on my table that I've ever reviewed. It's one thing to have a pad that has a design on it, and it's another thing to have a pad that has a design on it, and the printing and artwork comes out good. You know, the coloring is excellent, everything is excellent. This is definitely the best designed mousepad I've had on this table. Both of these are 490 by 490 squares, 3.5 millimeters thick. The Duel only comes in this square sizing. The Vagabond actually comes in a smaller sizing, the same as Artisan, so it would be a 490 by 420 instead if you wanted a smaller version. Now, thankfully, I have both in large squares, which is what I prefer. Previously, the Duel was listed for $50 US, but is now on sale, probably permanently on sale, for $40. The Vagabond here is $40 US for both sizing off the InfinityMice website, but for some reason, if you buy it locally on OzModShop, the smaller size is 80 Australian and the big size here is 90 Australian. So I'm assuming that extra $10 cost for us here in OCE local comes from the additional shipping costs, because this one has to come bigger. So to give you guys the quick summary, these are both control pads. That's how I see it. There's a bit more debate on what the Vagabond is here because I've had multiple different opinions from mine, but these are both definitely control pads. The Duel is a proper, slow, smooth cloth control pad, and the Vagabond here is a textured cloth control pad that's a bit faster than the Duel. Both don't function particularly well with arm sleeves, which is unfortunate, but the glide on skin is near perfect. So just don't use a sleeve and you'll be fine. Performance is excellent, definitely top of the class for their respective characteristics and speeds. I feel like they're probably a little bit slower than the Artisan Zero perhaps, but definitely an easy go-to for those that want a slower control pad. If you guys liked Zowie mouse pads, if you guys like slow pads, you're a tac shooter player or whatever, or you play a really high sense and you need that control, just buy these. Buy one of them. Pick between them based on if you want non-textured or textured. If you want faster pads, or you mostly play Apex, Overwatch, whatever, where you're doing a lot of zooming around, maybe you want faster pads. But if you're a tac shooter player, you want a slow pad, this is it. Definitely my top recommendations, period. So we'll talk about the base. The base on the 2 of them are not actually the same. The Duel uses the same Chinese poron that I reviewed in the High Star Mirai video, or I believe it to be anyway. Kind of rubbery to the touch, but performance and functionality, it's really good, does not move on your table, and I'm just an overall fan. I don't particularly care about where the space is from, if it's Chinese, if it's Japanese, if it's poron, if it's not poron, or whatever. All I'm telling you is that the space is good. Meanwhile, here on the Vagabond, this is a custom IPU base. It functions pretty much the same as the poron as well. It has this custom InfinityMice logo on the actual base of the pad. Also functions excellently, sticks to the table, does not move, gets the job done, and both of these are top quality bases. Now as for the actual firmness, both of these are definitely on that X-Soft firmness. I'm a huge fan of how these feel, and this is what I wish all my other pads could feel like. Whether that be the P51 or the Energon, this is how I want them. Even though both of these measure in at 3.5 millimeters thick, the Duel definitely feels slightly thicker than the Vagabond here. It could be potentially due to the surface cloth itself or something. I'm not too sure on that, but even though these are the same dimensions, this definitely feels a tiny bit thicker. I would prefer both of these to be slightly thicker. That's my preference, but nonetheless, the base on these are excellent. Stitching quality is perfect on both. It's a surface level stitching, not above or below the pad, and maintains medium stitching thickness. So if you guys looked at the Soku pads or the X-ray pads, you see they have really thick stitching, and you look at the Artisan pads and they have really thin ones. This is, well, in between that. Now, given the size of these pads, the stitching sits right on the edge of my desk when I use it normally. Like, I would have the corner of this mouse pad literally on the edge of the table, and then my whole arm would rest on the pad, so I do not feel the stitching whatsoever. I don't think this stitching here should ever be a concern of anyone. It is literally of the highest quality. It's not the #1 performance stitching. Not that stitching really affects performance, but if you wanted to nitpick it, the below the surface thin stitching that Artisan does or the P51 has is definitely the most optimal for performance. Nonetheless, like, it literally doesn't matter, right? It just doesn't matter. This is still one of the best stitching around. Moving to texture. The Duel here is an untextured pad. It's what you'd expect if you bought a Zowie or a QCK or a Logitech pad or anything that's not textured. You'd expect it to feel like this. The Vagabond here, however, is a textured pad with really, really nice textured feedback under the skates. So it's not heavily textured, unlike something like, say, the Heian or the Loki would be, but it has just enough feedback to not leave you wanting more. I think this also has one of the best textured feedbacks I've ever tried. It rivals against that of the Focus Ambition, which I mentioned a lot in that video too. I am a huge fan of how this feels. Sometimes I wish the Energon would have this kind of textured feel while maintaining the same sort of arm sleeve glide on it, but then that wouldn't really be an Energon, so I can't really say much. Nonetheless, I love how this feels. Unfortunately, neither of these work particularly well with arm sleeves. Right. On the video, it looks like this glides okay, but in actual practice, it is mediocre. Same thing with the Vagabond here. However, both of these glide super well on your arm, on your skin itself. There is literally no abrasion whatsoever on the Vagabond, and needless to say, it would be the same on the Duel. So I was actually super happy to use these pads without an arm sleeve. I think these are the first mouse pads that I've ever tried since I started using an arm sleeve that actually makes me happy to take the sleeve off and use it without one. And that's saying something. I'm more than happy to recommend these even to arm sleeve users because you guys can just take your sleeve off and it functions well. Now, as for speed and control, the Duel is slow. Like, true control pad territory slow. And I think this is as slow as it should ever get for actual viability. Like, if you use a pad slower than this, you should probably get a new mouse pad. Any tac shooter player that wants a proper control pad should look into this. If you guys enjoyed your GSRs or GSRZ or whatever, just get one of these. This is like the ultimate version. Surprisingly though, the glide itself isn't particularly slow. So it's more like there's medium dynamic friction. So when the mouse is actually moving and you're doing big macro movements, swiping it on the pad, it doesn't actually feel that slow. But then the initial micro adjustments is relatively slow. It's got high static friction and it feels really controlled for those of you playing tac shooters, focusing on crosshair placement and stuff. So I think it's a very good balance between that. So you don't struggle to do those big turns and swing your arm around in games, but you maintain that extreme control that you want going into a control pad. Very high quality item. The Vagabond here is faster than the Duel, but it remains in control pad category. Now the speed of the Vagabond really did change depending on what skates I was using. When I was using a stock Atlantis skates, it felt really slow. Now that I put core pads onto this RDS, then it feels a lot faster. I still think it's a control pad. It's similar to that of the Focus Ambition. I think the Ambition is slightly faster in actual use, simply because that base is a lot firmer, this is a lot squishier, you can get a lot more control by pushing down. Regardless, the speed and control on this mousepad is just all around well balanced and excellent. Top recommendation for those who play medium to high sensitivity in any game. There is no tugging feeling on micros, there's no tugging feeling on big swipes, but it is a control pad, and it's just good. It's just good, that's all I can say about it. So I'm throwing up a clip on the screen right now. It's from a tournament match I played recently, and in that clip I was using the Atlantis with stock skates on the Vagabond. And well, as you can see, my aim is just really slow. Right, I didn't try it on the Duel because the Duel was just actually too slow for me. This was like the bare minimum, and especially on my low sense, my aim is just slow. So hopefully that can give you guys a bit of an indication about how this pad performed for me. But I can definitely say shots felt crispy, they were clean because I had that control, that high precision. So who should buy these? Well, if you want a slower control pad, this is it. Pick between the two based on you want untextured or textured. That's it. That's what should influence your decision. They get my highest recommendation at this point for being on the slower side of pads. And there's really not much more for me to say here. I've already recommended the Duel to one of the good brothers, Notion, if you watch this. Shout out to the boy, Notion. I tried this pad for like a minute and I'm like, yep, this is a Notion pad. I told him to buy it. This is what he's been looking for. Like, if you want a slow control pad, just buy one of these. You're done. You're done. That's it. So once again, I would like to congratulate InfinityMice first for creating 2 excellent pads, because I love these designs and I can't emphasize that enough. But usually pads with good designs fail in performance, and somehow these maintain probably highest performance in respective class and category. So congratulations InfinityMice for creating something like this. It comes in the right sizing, good base, good stitching, good performance, good design. They're so good. And so shout out InfinityMice for sending me these through. I look forward to potentially reviewing the new Infinite series if that becomes an opportunity as well. Get these from Ozmod Shop if you guys are interested. Highly, highly recommend. Now obviously, if you like faster pads, you're not going to enjoy these. But if you don't mind medium or slower speed mouse pads, this is it. Peace.